Hey, welcome back to part 5 of the M5 Touring build. This series has really made a lot of progress so far. We've got the rear subframe into the wagon. We were able to get all the PowerFlex bushings in for the subframe and the differential. We also got the front differential mount reinforced, so I'll show you some clips of that here.
We had this welded up. We filled in these holes where it should be weak. This is TIG. Laid some dimes down on it, strengthen it up. Should be ready to go.
Cool. Well, thanks, Spence. And then we got the rear axles in using a special tool. So that saved us a lot of time. We were able to borrow that from a friend. So we put the rear axles in, and then we were able to put in the rear differential. So axles had to go in first, rear differential went up, installed, all torqued down, all the axles torqued down. And so now we've got the wagon on its wheels. So the wagon's in the garage, we were able to roll it around, get the race car into the garage. And so that's what I'm excited to show you today, is where we're at on the wagon, as well as what we're gonna be doing. And today we're gonna be painting the motor. So I finally got everything laid out behind me. I'm excited to get everything painted. First things first, we're gonna make sure everything on the motor is clean, and that way we'll have a perfectly prepped surface to apply our POR-15 engine enamel to. So let's check out the process of how we're gonna paint this motor, and then let's get to it. So this is the race car slash drift car. It's an E36 M3 compact swap. This is a 318 Ti. It was an automatic transmission before, and now it has since been converted to an M3 full drivetrain. The rear differential is still an E30 diff, limited slip at least. We've got a DTM Fiberworks wide body kit on here, which is going to be painted in an upcoming video, so stay tuned for that. And we'll also be doing a lot more updates on this car in an upcoming build series. So if you're excited for that, let me know, and I can't wait to be showing you guys some of the work that's already been done, as well as really refreshing the car and taking it to the next level. I'm excited to do things like the harness bar, harnesses, rear wing, even just painting the fender flares. I think is going to be really exciting. The wagon is right here. As I said, we don't have suspension set up on it yet, so we are missing the airbags and the air management system. So that's gonna be in an upcoming video, but for now, the car is fully slammed on the ground. We are tucking a ton of lip in there. I think it looks super sick. And the funny part is that the car actually rolls at this height. There's a bumper stop in there, which keeps the axle from going further than is safe. And that's what makes the car allowed to roll when it's at maximum low position. So it'll look really cool when we have the air management set up, and this we will be able to adjust it. Stay tuned for an upcoming episode on installing air management on this E39 Touring that came with factory steel springs. Now over here we have the factory valve covers as well as the coil covers. I have it soaking in an engine degreaser, and that's what's going to allow me to pull off all this grease easily. And I've also got a couple brushes. This one's a little softer, this one's a little harder, and then once we get most of the grease and dirt off, we'll clean it with some brake cleaner afterwards. Over here we have the motor. I already went and kind of cleaned up a little bit of the inside here with a small brush. I'll show you how I did that in a second. So we still need to clean the undersides all over here because it looks like there's still some corrosion buildup or something, so we don't want to paint over that. We want to have a perfectly clean surface. So I'm going to show you guys how we clean that. We're going to do black on the block. We're going to refresh the black on here. I think we might just sand over later to get the silver back out of here. So we're going to paint over it, not a big deal. And then on the heads, the oil pan and the timing covers, we're going to go with an POR-15 Olds Gold. Alrighty, so here's everything that you're going to need to paint your engine using POR-15 engine enamel. To apply the paint, you're going to need some foam brushes. This was like a few bucks at Harbor Freight. These are like 79 cents at Harbor Freight each. These are to remove any corrosion, I'd say, or to remove any buildup. It's going to be necessary on the timing covers because the timing covers were not glass bead blasted like the rest of the motor was, including the heads. So the last thing you're going to need is going to be some brake clean. This is a couple bucks again at Harbor Freight. So here is the POR-15 engine enamel, high temp resistant. Obviously they recommend a couple of coats. We're going to paint all these pieces. Luckily, I think with the fact that we're doing this with brushes, it's going to make it easy to keep the paint where we want it to and keep it off of the edges. But some pieces like the water pump, we're going to tape off. Alrighty, so we have just about everything taped up here that we need to. I went ham on the timing covers because I thought those were the most important. with the mating surfaces. The only thing left is the upper oil pan to tape off around the mating surfaces. But right now, I think we're gonna focus our attention on the motor so that we can have it ready to paint. So let's grab our little brushes and make sure there's no corrosion left on the motor. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna spray it with some brake cleaner, and that's going to let any of the dust or corrosion kind of wash off, and then it'll leave it perfectly dry and basically ready for us to paint. Grab our microfiber and try to pull off some of that moisture. Very shiny motor. Cool. This is ready to paint. So we're finally ready to do the painting or begin the painting process. So everything is masked off near the areas that we're gonna be painting. Even like the time chain tensioner right here, front main seal, water pump, the heads, the lower oil pan or the upper oil pan gasket mating surface. This isn't taped off, this isn't taped off, don't even worry about that. But then these surfaces where we have our scavenger pumps going in, and then on the back here, and then these are all already masked off. So I'm really excited. Let's take a look and see what this paint looks like. Oh my gosh. So I did mix this up a second ago. Grab some. Let's see what this is gonna look like. Probably gonna have to crack a window because this is like, you know what it smells like? It's like nail polish. But it looks like it's gonna fill in all the gaps really well and maintain like a metal look. Let's get all this painted up. Okay, so status update. We've got the first layer of paint done on everything, I'm pretty sure. So front main timing cover, the two head timing covers, the oil pan. This is actually going behind the bell housing of the transmission, so I didn't need to paint it, so I'm not going to do a second coat on it, but it still does look pretty good in gold. So lower oil pan, secondary oil pan or the upper oil pan. We've got the heads painted, and I was able to go around the header connections where the gaskets would go. But here I'm not so concerned because we're gonna be laying in rubber gaskets to go to the intake. So really well done. And then over here, we went ahead and did the first layer of the painting on the covers, and the engine we'll get to in a second. But the covers came out pretty good. We're, getting between all the lines here. There, was some like marking before where the paint was starting to come off, where I think it's filling in good. So the first layer is on pretty good. I think it's gonna have a good finish. And then this is what the motor looks like currently. So really weird. For some reason, the paint didn't want to stick to this. So I did the first layer, and it, obviously it's gonna get pretty tacky. So I'm wondering if it's gonna need like 2 layers or maybe 3 layers. So we're gonna let this dry, and we're gonna go back to the gold pieces next. But hopefully by the time that this is dry, it'll take the next layer really good and start to, turn black. Otherwise, I'm not so sure. I don't want to spend a ton of time doing, 5-10 layers on the block, but I'm really hoping it's going to come out good. So let's go to the next step. Okay, so we are now 2 coats deep on everything. The timing covers are coming out really good. The gold is really saturated now, so it doesn't look like you can see any of the silver underneath. Looks like we might be doing a 3rd coat just to make sure that it looks really even, but I'm really happy with how it looks with just 2 coats. Heads looking super fresh. Also, we're at 2 coats on the heads. Valve covers we're at 2 coats on as well, so starting to see like a consistent black on the entire valve cover. Before it was like a satin black, and now it's probably going to be a little bit more glossy, but we'll see how that comes out. The engine is what I was worried about, but the engine's coming out so good so far. The second coat is what I think is really going to start adding color, and so that's 2 coats deep there, and that's 1 coat on the side of the block. So it starts looking just like dirty metal, and then 2 coats and it starts to kind of like look black. I think 3 coats is going to be really uniform, maybe 4. So the engine block, we might have to do 4 coats of enamel, but I don't mind going heavy. And this stuff actually doesn't get used up very quickly, so I'm sure that we'll have plenty left for the end of the project to do other things in the future. I'm going to take a break for tonight, and we'll come back to this tomorrow to get the 3rd coat on and probably the 4th coat on the rest of this stuff. Stay tuned. All right, so we are now 48 hours almost ahead from the start of this painting procedure, and I like to say that I think the gold came out really, really good. This is, again, Olds Gold Engine Enamel by POR-15 on the timing covers that were originally silver and that had been glass bead blasted. The finish came out great. It stuck really well. It coated really well. No running, nothing, no problems, really. So it worked really well for all of this, as well as the heads. And for the heads, it was very easy to coat and control where it was going. And I really like this gold finish. It literally looks gold. I think when you have the headers on, it's just gonna have like a really awesome look to it. So now let's go on and look at the motor. Alrighty, so this is about 3 or 4, I think it's 4 coats actually on the valve covers and on the ignition coil covers. Came out very, very glossy. I'd say it kind of looks like a black glass is how I would best describe it. But I try to use the foam brush to get it to have a kind of like a wrinkly texture. And so I think that maybe you'll be able to see that here, maybe not. But overall, it just looks like, you know, it was painted, and it's a high gloss black. I think it's gonna look really good when this is polished and this is on top of that, because I didn't paint the inside here. I didn't want to worry about the threaded portions or anything like that. Now let's look at the motor. The center of the motor came out decent, pretty good coverage, just looks like very black, but also very glossy. It's crazy how glossy this stuff is. On the motor, the POR-15 applies differently than it would on the timing covers. You have to use a lot more product to actually cover it up. So again, this is the center between the heads, and it looks pretty good. Let me show you the sides. So here's one side, pretty decent coverage, really glossy, really shiny, looks like it's wet still, but it's actually fully dried. But again, it's hard to get in some places. You might be able to see some of the spotting where I wasn't able to fully coat, I feel like. But I'm pretty happy with how it came out. This is the other side of the motor. Again, it's pretty black, very, very glossy, but I feel like it could use maybe 1 or 2 more coats. But I think that we're gonna maybe touch this up once it's all assembled. And again, you're not gonna see this from the bottom of the car ever. It's gonna be covered up with a lot of stuff. So this was really something I wanted to do for myself to see what the motor would look like, but I think it's gonna come out great when it's all assembled. So we're gonna let all this dry. We have parts coming in the mail to assemble the bottom end of this motor and get the oil pump in. So stay tuned for the next episode of this M5 Wagon build as we assemble the oil pump and put it on the underside of the motor, as well as putting the oil pan on and the heads as well with our head gaskets. So stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks.